gonna keep going to this. I'm getting near about to where I was going with this entire message. So if you followed any of the, it would take a little bit of the context of this series to appreciate where I'm coming from with this. So what I'm saying is that you can really take in an environment. You can start to take in an environment, but you can also engage with and interact with an environment, both socially, but also just personally, by disciplining your awareness and accessing your awareness differently, approaching your awareness differently than you normally do. And one example is to really lean into listening and lead with listening and really deeply take in sounds. And it's a beautiful experience. And I think it's actually more beautiful than music. After being I'm probably one of your heaviest users of some of the different music platforms, and I've been like that for a long time. And then on top of that, I write music sometimes, but actually just real life is actually more beautiful in terms of sound than actually music. I've come to appreciate that, and that statement right there, and just recognizing that statement and what that statement might mean to another person could actually amount to being a person who is learned, that is appreciate, that is enjoy sound, and that's a deep level of accomplishment according to Arthur Avalon. But I want to say an example of that, and this is the more dark aspect, but it's a part of what I was leading up to, is that if anyone now with this video that I'm going to make, I'm going to say the only background that I have around this is that I have at least seen one car drive down the road before, and I have at least seen one car park before. And then through that, I had an opportunity to become a professional driver, and I started as a caring for children who had special needs at different grade levels. And on my first day, I took one student, then two, then three, then four. And then after that, I drove a small school bus that was all, so the first had been a regular vehicle, then larger vehicles, getting into a small school bus, and that had a few students that were special needs, like, or they were in summer school in a area where I live that is traditionally economically disadvantaged, and they had a little bit of turbulence in school to be attending in the summertime like that. And there's also one child there who was a female, and she had severe special needs. And then I had a coworker who was actually, that coworker themselves was very troubled. You could tell that just by their behavior with among the coworkers and some of the statements that they'd make publicly. And that person didn't think that I liked them. But I had an opportunity to have them ride with me one time, and they were actually the most smooth, graceful, and funny and engaging person around the children at summer school. And she actually was able to engage that student that had the most severe special needs, and was teaching her words. With that, by that point, I didn't actually know that she was verbal like that. And I saw another side of that student that I had not seen before, because of the way that this person, who was also you could appreciate as maybe being troubled in life, had actually engaged the student with special needs in such a beautiful and profound way. And I gave her flowers for that around other coworkers. And one time she was about to kick me. She was about to whip out some kung fu on me because she thought I was talking about her behind her back. But then they were like, no, he was actually giving you a compliment. Because but you had to be careful around her, even complimenting her. You could get into hot water with her. But she was brilliant around that student. And then after that, I was comfortable taking school buses with any number of students, full to capacity, of any background, in any environment, in different cities. Some large cities in the Midwest with a lot of history I was at with these roles. And then some of the lessons I learned doing that, but also the confidence, and then taking that into life. I got better in life with that. So that's my background for where I'm coming from with this. But what I meant to say is that if you remember, if anyone's old in here is old enough or has come across the movie Boys in the Hood, that movie starts where you actually, I don't think it starts with video. I think it starts with audio, and you hear I think it's a small boy, and that boy is he's crying because he's in the aftermath of his older sibling being slain in a violent attack. And that is, when I first heard that, I was maybe about, like, just at the latter point of elementary school. And I had already seen I had seen a lot of graphic stuff on television at that time, because there were a lot of graphic stuff in the '90s. A lot of film and music was already graphic, and there was a lot of culture around violence in the '90s. And I referenced some of my experiences around different films in another video about violence I did, referencing the actor Ice-T in a film where he's hunted for sport as a homeless man. But this film, Boys in the Hood, was more graphic and more disturbing to me. Because I had a younger brother at that point, about the same gap between myself and my brother as is implied in that film, where someone's older brother has been slain and the younger brother is traumatized that same moment as the slaying has happened. But it occurs over audio, so it's more graphic with the audio than the visual, because like I've said, with different visual things, we can fixate and identify and be distracted and have habits about details, even in something graphic on television, where sometimes we've seen so many graphic things that visually we're not impressed by it just because it's visual, because we've seen different things like that before, so it's not compelling. But have you heard something like that? So in that film, by leading with the audio, it's way more graphic because it's just the audio. And sometimes I was saying that actually life might be way more beautiful by just leaning into sound. But if you appreciate that, how graphic that is, you are reminded of how graphic violence actually is. But another thing with that is that so what I was saying in the other video, I was saying that in another series, I was saying that one of the things that's really that you can reduce a lot of oppression and the inequities, but also the violence that experienced by marginalized people, economically marginalized, but also socially, in different places in times historically, but in the United States. You can appreciate that. I lost my train of thought. Um, um, you can appreciate that it's a form of oppression. The type of the type of outcomes that different groups are having, contrasted with the type of outcomes that other groups are having. Generally speaking, statistically speaking, you can see that there's a skewing and inequity of outcomes, especially violent outcomes. I think there would be statistics to support that statement, I think. But with that, um, um, but I think that some people would call it oppression, but I think a more accurate term would be an abusive relationship. And the most key feature of an abusive relationship is the combination of flattery and detriment, insult, because the flattery keeps a person on the hook past their better judgment, but it also keeps a person from defending themselves, because you don't have the true instincts for self-defense while you're being flattered, while you're having a relationship, while you're being courted. You don't have the natural instincts to get away from something or to put up a fight when there's a combination of flattery with the insult. And that actually makes the insult more punishing, more taxing, and more extended, because the flattery, it sets up the insult, and it makes the damage go deeper, but it also makes it sustain longer, which is a form of making it go deeper. And that's what's so troubling about traumatic relationships. But it can be seen and appreciated in the use of the N word in the United States, because the use of the N word as it prevails, and I've said in another video that may be one of your more prominent and used words of any word in modern times, generally speaking, in the West. I would imagine in terms of popular culture, the N word would have to rank high in internet usage. But it's exactly a replica of an abusive relationship, because it can be used as a term of endearment, and also a term of an open season green lighting for the different forms of assault or just disrespect of people that would bear an appearance that term can be applied to. Is the N word. It can be used to make it okay to hurt someone. It can also be used to make it cool to respect someone. But by respecting a person with that term and identifying with that term, it somehow makes a person open to have that term used against them when it is used in a violent way, I think. So what I'm saying is that that's a little bit where I wanted to go with that.